These entrepreneurs were once featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list at some point in their careers, but have since faced various charges related to fraud. First on the list is Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the founder and CEO of the cryptocurrency exchange FTX and associated trading firm Alameda Research, both of which experienced a high-profile collapse, resulting in Chapter 11 bankruptcy in late 2022. Prior to FTX's collapse, Bankman-Fried was ranked the 41st richest American in the Forbes 400 and the 60th richest person in the world by the World Billionaires. His net worth peaked at $26 billion. In November of 2022, Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao announced his intention to sell Binance's $529 million holdings of FTT, FTX's token, which they received as part of a sale of its equity in FTX in 2021. Shortly after, Zhao announced that Binance had entered into a non-binding agreement to purchase FTX due to a liquidity crisis at FTX. Once news of the crisis broke, FTT lost 80% of its value overnight as panic set in the market. The very next day, Binance decided not to pursue the deal, citing FTX's mishandling of customer funds and pending investigations. Though it was never officially confirmed, Binance seemingly stood to gain more market share from FTX's demise. What made this situation even more advantageous for Binance was that they could potentially benefit without having to acquire FTX or spend any money on the transaction. Bankman-Fried lost his billionaire status, and regulatory bodies began investigating FTX's connections. On November 11th, FTX, Alameda Research, and over 130 related entities declared bankruptcy. On the same day, Bankman-Fried resigned as FTX's CEO. A month later, Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas and was subsequently extradited to the United States. An indictment against him before the US District Court for the Southern District of New York was unsealed on December 13th, revealing 8 criminal charges for offenses including wire fraud, commodities fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance law violations. Bankman-Fried faces up to 115 years in prison if convicted on all 8 counts. One campaign finance charge was dropped on July 27, 2023 as part of an effort to adhere to the legal obligations of Bankman-Fried's extradition from the Bahamas. But he is still facing wire and securities fraud charges ahead of his trial in October. While Bankman-Fried fooled your average citizen, Charlie Javice was able to trick JP Morgan into buying her fraudulent company. Javice is the founder and former CEO of the startup Frank, a student financial aid application assistance company. Just a few years ago, Javice was riding high. In 2019, the tech CEO landed a spot on the list for her work at the startup, which she described as Amazon for higher education. Frank helped students navigate the financial aid process. It was apparently so successful at doing this that JP Morgan Chase acquired the company for $175 million in 2021, and Javice was made a managing director at the bank. The entrepreneur shared the news on LinkedIn, boasting that in just 4 years, Frank had grown to serve over 5 million students at over 6,000 colleges. Well, it turns out those numbers might have just been a tad bit exaggerated. On April 4, 2023, Javice was charged by the Justice Department with falsely and dramatically inflating the number of customers of her company, in order to get JP Morgan Chase to buy it. According to the lawsuit, Frank only had about 300,000 clients and fabricated data by paying $18,000 for over 4 million fake student names to persuade JP Morgan to purchase Frank. Javice has been charged with separate counts of conspiracy to commit wire and bank fraud, each of which carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. Javice has denied all the allegations against her. But what's even crazier is the story of Nate Paul, who made it to the Forbes list for being the owner of Austin-based real estate firm World Class Capital Group. He founded World Class in 2007 and built a portfolio of commercial properties through ambitious acquisition strategies, eventually becoming known for the large black banners on his properties, proclaiming another world-class project. Paul's wealth, estimated to be about $800 million at the time of his 2017 Forbes profile, allowed him to live a luxurious lifestyle. He drove around Austin in a Bentley, owned a mansion worth $2.4 million, and was seen at high-profile events such as Leonardo DiCaprio's 39th birthday party. In October of 2018, Paul made a $25,000 donation to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Following the donation, Paxton was the subject of whistleblower complaints from his aides that he used his office to help Paul's business interests and intervened on Paul's behalf. He was later impeached over allegations of misusing his office to help Paul, among other misconducts. On June 8, 2023, Paul was arrested and booked into the Austin jail on a warrant issued by the FBI. Paul was charged with 8 felony counts of making false statements to financial institutions. The indictment details specify instances where Paul allegedly overstated his assets and understated his liabilities to fraudulently obtain loans that his business could not afford, including 3 occasions where he used counterfeit documents. The charges were laid out on the day after his arrest, and federal prosecutors are seeking $172 million in restitution from Paul. Another embarrassing Forbes alum is Martin Farmerbro Shkreli, who made it to the list in 2012. Shkreli became infamous in 2015 after jacking up the price of a single pill of the prescription medication Daraprim from $13.50 to $750 while serving as CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals. This wasn't the first time he did this, because in the previous year, Shkreli acquired the rights to market the drugs tiopronin, used to treat cystinuria, and Chenodal. He then raised the price of Thiola by 20-fold, from $1.50 to $30 per pill, and Chenodal by 5-fold. On December 17, 2015, Martin Shkreli was arrested and charged with securities fraud relating to his tenure at MSMB Capital Management and Retrofin. Prosecutors accused him of running his company like a Ponzi scheme. Shkreli claimed he was targeted for his price hikes and personality. Shkreli was found guilty on 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of conspiracy on August 4, 2017. His bail was revoked due to a controversial Facebook post offering $5,000 for a strand of Hillary Clinton's hair, which the judge perceived as solicitation to assault, and he was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison on March 9, 2018. Shkreli's appeal was rejected in 2019, but while Shkreli was released in mid-2020, the next Forbes fraudster is still in prison to this day. Obinwane Okeke, also known as Invictus Obi, is a Nigerian entrepreneur. In June 2016, Okeke was named on Forbes Africa's 30 Under 30 list for 2016, while still 28 years old and residing in South Africa. Until his arrest by the FBI following a 13-month investigation, Okeke was a globally renowned businessman who had investments in oil and gas, agriculture, private equity, and various other sectors under the Invictus Group. The Invictus Group operated in 3 African countries, namely Nigeria, South Africa, and Zambia. On August 6, 2019, Okeke was arrested and charged with 2 counts of computer fraud and wire fraud. According to the charges, he and his syndicates had defrauded American citizens of up to $11 million through fraudulent wire transfer instructions in a massive coordinated business email compromise scheme. Around the same time, he was linked to a massive coordinated fraud scheme, leading to the Department of Justice's indictment of 80 individuals, mostly Nigerians, in what was called the largest case of online fraud in US history. On February 16, 2021, Okeke was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. But the biggest fraud of all is the founder of Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. Whilst Holmes never actually made the 30 Under 30 list, she did headline the Forbes Under 30 Summit. Elizabeth Holmes is an American former biotechnology entrepreneur convicted of fraud related to her company, Theranos. The company, once valued at $9 billion, claimed to have revolutionized blood testing by developing methods that needed only very small volumes of blood, such as from a finger prick. Forbes named Holmes the youngest and wealthiest self-made female billionaire in the US in 2015, but revised her net worth to 0 the next year amid revelations of potential fraud. Theranos' decline began in 2015, with investigations casting doubt on the company's claims. In 2018, Holmes was charged with massive fraud by the SEC and later settled by paying fines and accepting a ban from serving as an officer or director of a public company. In 2022, she was convicted of defrauding investors and sentenced to over 11 years in prison with a fine of $452 million. Theranos' story is a fascinating one, and if you'd like to watch the full documentary about them, check out the video on screen. Until next time, stay healthy, stay focused, and stay tuned.